Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon once again. May I invite you to stand with us for the national anthem of Antigua Barbuda, after which we'll remain standing for the invocation.
Let us bow our heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you this afternoon. We thank you because you're God. We thank you for life and for opportunities like this where we can come together as a community, locally, regionally, and by virtue of the internet, internationally, to communicate and to share ideas and to help each other. We ask, dear God, that these proceedings are productive and that everything is done in decency and in order. Amen.
You may be seated. The Honorable Melford Nicholas, Minister for Information and Communication Technologies, Utilities and Energy. Mrs. Karen Richardson, President of the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, Ambassador John Hamilton, resident British Ambassador, Lieutenant Colonel Croft, thank you so much for joining us, sir, who is the Director of the Office of National Drug and Money Laundering Control Policy, all our panelists, members of the Planning Committee, ladies and gentlemen, whether in the room or on the internet, good evening. I'm Ursula Charles Jr., thanking you so much for joining us this hour for the National Cybersecurity and Fraud Prevention Forum. Now, it's meant, of course, to be a very informative session this afternoon. We wanted to be as communicative as possible as we together share ideas so that we can better prevent money laundering and fraud, not only in Antigua Barbuda, but across the region. So, before we get to our panels, we'll bring you some words of greeting. First, we welcome the President of the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, Mrs. Karen Richardson, to greet us. Please welcome her.
Good afternoon, Honorable Melford Nicholas, Minister of Information, Communication Technologies, Utilities and Energy, Lieutenant Colonel Edward H. Croft, Director of ONDCP, representatives from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, other distinguished panelists, invited guests, members of the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association and the financial services community, our public and private sector partners, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen joining us in person and online. On behalf of the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural National Cybersecurity and Fraud Prevention Forum. Today's forum marks the beginning of an ongoing national effort to combat cyber-enabled fraud. Now, this is not intended to be a one-time conversation, but is the foundation for continued collaboration, continued education, and coordinated action. the Bankers Association is proud to stand alongside our partners as a member of the Antigua and Barbuda Cyber-Enabled Fraud Task Force, which was established specifically to address this evolving threat. This afternoon, we have brought together an exceptional panel representing government, law enforcement, regulators, telecommunications providers, and the banking community. Their expertise will help us better understand today's cyber threats and the practical steps we can take to strengthen our cyber resilience. Even before this afternoon, we witnessed the power of collaboration. Our panelists immediately accepted the invitation to participate, recognizing the importance of this national effort. I'd like to recognize ACT for its generous support in developing the forum's landing page. Their contribution, together with our other partners, is a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when organizations unite behind a common purpose. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. And as a banking community, we have done our introspection and our reflection, and we remain committed to strengthening our systems, improving our responsiveness, and maintaining open and transparent dialogue with our customers as we all face this threat. But at the same time, we encourage every customer to play an active role in protecting themselves. Cyber-enabled fraud often succeeds because criminals exploit trust. Taking a moment to pause, verify, and question something that does not feel right may prevent significant financial losses. We know that behind every reported incident is a person whose livelihood, whose confidence, and whose peace of mind have been affected. And as an association, we denounce every act of financial crime that threatens the financial security and well-being of our people. While every reported case will be assessed on its own merit, and we continue to cooperate fully with the relevant authorities, where legitimate credentials have been used to authorize transactions, the prospects for recovering those funds have been significantly limited. And in some cases, recovery may not be possible. And that is why our greatest opportunity lies not in after the fraud has occurred, but in preventing it from happening in the first place. There must be a sustained effort on all sides to prevent cyber-enabled fraud long after this forum has ended. The criminals, they are collaborating, and so must we. If we leave here this afternoon, every organization represented strengthens one area of cybersecurity. Every institution shares one lesson, and every citizen adopts one safer digital habit. Then together, we will have taken a meaningful step towards a digital safe and more resilient Antigua and Barbuda. So my hope is that this forum will inspire more individuals, organizations, and communities to raise their hands and say, yes, I want to be part of the solution. I thank you for joining us this afternoon into the evening and for participating in this important national effort. And I trust that the discussions to come will leave us better informed, better equipped, and better protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Richardson. Very poignant words there, in particular, that the fraudsters are collaborating. And so I need you to help me, to help you to keep my money safe. So this conversation this afternoon is extremely important, and I'm glad that we all gathered here in the room, and of course those of us online are here to work together so that we can help keep banking information and of course our bank accounts all safe. We will now hear, as Mrs. Richardson said, from the government perspective, because the public sector really an important player in cybersecurity and fraud prevention. And so we will invite the Minister of Responsibility for Information and Communication Technologies, ICTs, Utilities and Energy, the Honorable Melford Nicholas, to the podium.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. And with your concurrence, I'd like to adopt the protocols previously established. Good afternoon, everyone. As the Minister responsible for Information Communication Technology in the government of Antigua and Barbuda, it gives me great pleasure to be here, not only from the standpoint of supporting my friend, Mrs. Richardson, Karen Richardson, but also from the standpoint that this is an harbinger or a precursor to an initiative that the government itself would wish to usher in, perhaps maybe after we have completed our responsibilities to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And to which, this initiative to which I speak, it's really to bring into being a framework, a more structured framework for a national CERT. For those of you who are here, and I imagine everyone has been bathed in some of the jargon of the technology, but let me just, for the purposes of being explicit to everyone, a CERT is really a computer incident response team, which the government has itself established its own framework within the government, and that team is responsible for, in the first instance, testing, doing penetration to ensure that the systems are robust. We keep looking for loopholes, weaknesses in the digital infrastructure, and to plug those weaknesses. But in the information communication technology field, these threats continue to evolve. So in the event that we have been unable to put the walls up sufficiently high, and there is an intrusion, there is an event, certainly that team is also responsible for detecting it and for finding a way of restoring, bringing back business continuity. So this is going to be a key part of the cyber security frameworks. But it should be noted that cybersecurity is everyone's business. Anyone who is involved in the whole question of digital transformation, and by that we know that every time we speak of digital transformation, we're talking about the creation of digital assets, and everyone is involved in it. And you may ask, are we speaking about the physical infrastructure? Yes, we're talking about servers and firewalls, but we are also speaking about the databases and the information that we hold for our customers. And so the type of cybercrime and cyber fraud that would concern the banking community, of course, would be access to your financial assets for persons who would seek to create opportunities to encroach on unsuspecting people and to steal monies from their accounts, create fraudulent environments for persons to woo people into situations where they give out more information than they normally would, and then all of a sudden you recognize that you suffered some type of cyber fraud. But from the government standpoint, our net is much wider, and I'm happy to say that I'm seeing that the banking institutions are taking this first step. It's an important step, and they're going to be a key stakeholder in the national CERT when we bring it into operation. But from the government standpoint, we also have to be concerned. Many of you would know that in my other role, I'm also responsible for the public utilities. And in those circumstances, the electricity network has a framework that we call a SCADA. It's a supervisory system that we are able to look at all of the network's points and be able to coordinate them from central location. We have to be concerned about protecting that network as well, the SCADA network for the electricity. Later this year, we will put a similar SCADA system in place for the water distribution. So that infrastructure, if we're not careful, could be vulnerable towards a cyber attack. We haven't had any of those yet, to the best of my knowledge, in the Caribbean, but there's always day one when something happens. We have to be prepared. So from the government's own standpoint, we are concerned that from a national security standpoint, and I'm happy to see at least one other member from the national security team that is here, cybersecurity is in fact national security. For anyone who would want to do business with us from abroad, there is such a thing as a cybersecurity index. And if several of the systems that we have here do not stand the test of the type of penetration and the type of security, persons would be loath to do business here in this environment because they will not feel as secure as they would. So cybersecurity is in fact national security. I don't want to go on too long because I think we have an expert panel here. My own director of cybersecurity is here on the panel, Mrs. Hector Morel, and I'm sure she will share her vast knowledge and experiences with you here. I just only want to echo the point that I made earlier, that this initiative is very welcome. It is a forerunner to a further initiative that's going to include, in a very real sense, the telecommunications operators, anyone who is involved in digital services on the island, even non-banking people who are doing digital services. We would want them to be involved because at any point in time, any intrusion at any level could affect people across institutions. And let me further say this, is that Mrs. Hector Morel, and I'm sure she will share it with you, has been a part of regional, trans-regional, and global conversations about this very aspect. We have collaborations with several other institutions. We have relationships with other CERTs within the CARICOM region and within the Latin American region, and certainly within Europe and the North American experience as well. So it means, therefore, if there is a fraud, a cyber event that intrudes here in Antigua, but the origins of it is in another country, we have the mechanisms in place to be able to seek collaboration from our international partners and seek to bring some degree of discovery and restitution. So I just wanted to leave those few words with you, and again to say that I fully endorse the meeting that is taking place here today, and I'm looking forward through the establishment of that wider framework to future collaborations with the banking community. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for those important words. As Mrs. Richardson pointed out, the number of stakeholders gathered in the room this afternoon, we made mention, of course, of the banking sector and now the government ministries. But of course, law enforcement also a very important part of the conversation this hour. And so we want to invite the director of the Office of National Drug and Money Laundering Control Policy, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Croft, to present a few words to us as well this afternoon. Lieutenant?
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Good evening. I wish to also embrace the protocol established, but ask your indulgence to specifically recognize the Honorable Melford Nicholas, Minister of Information, Communication Technologies, Utilities, and Energy, and Mrs. Karen Richardson, President of the Antigua and Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, whose leadership brings us here this evening. We are gathered here this evening not merely to discuss the technology, but to confront a direct, coordinated assault on the economic security of our people and the financial reputation of this jurisdiction. But let's speak with candor. When a citizen watches their life savings drained through a compromised email, a deceptive call, or an intercepted access code, they are experiencing a profound breach of trust. Picture a retiree who spent 30, 35, 40 years building a pension, and one convincing phone call later watches it disappear. I have minutes, but in seconds. This is not hypothetical. It is the lived reality behind our fraud statistics, which we will discuss later. And the claims that our institutions fail to spot anomalies, fail to freeze suspicious transfers in real time, fail to report fast enough. These are critiques we cannot dismiss with standard compliance language. But if this forum is to mean anything, we must look at the entire chessboard. And so I first want to start with the telecommunications gap. The crisis has too long been framed as strictly the bank versus the customer. The truth is, the front door of the bank cannot be locked if the back door of our telecommunications infrastructure stands wide open. Anonymity is the fraudster's greatest asset. A SIM card is no longer just a tool for a phone call. It is a financial key that unlocks banks, one-time passwords, and security codes. Our telecom providers must be held to the same rigorous know your customer standards as we do the banks. We live in a global environment, and so let me just shift a little and talk about the international threat. Compounding this, the masterminds are often thousands of miles away. Organized, well-resourced syndicates, running scripts and social engineering playbooks refined across thousands of victims in multiple countries. Because these actors sit in a safe haven jurisdictions, retroactive persecution and prosecution after the cash has moved is monumentally difficult. Our strategy cannot be post-mortem. It must be predictive infrastructure built before the theft occurs. The hard truth is, a dedicated investigative task force has been established, comprising of the Director of Public Prosecution, members of the Royal Police Force of Antigua and Barbuda, and members of the Office of National Drug and Money Laundering Control Policy to combat this phenomena directly. But we must be honest. When we ask international partners to trace these actors, our requests are really prioritized. However devastating these losses feel to us, against the scale of global cartels, our cases don't rise to the top of the pile. We must accept the truth. No one is coming to save us. We must save ourselves. And so I place a call for united partnership. And because this is true, our domestic architecture, the banks, the telecommunication service providers, law enforcement, our regulators, and you, the distinguished citizens, must ensure that we cooperate. It must be an airtight mechanism. This requires an ironclad partnership across every entity in this room. To the banks, implement systems that act as dynamic circuit breakers, throttling or holding out of pattern transfers until verification occurs. To the telecommunication service providers, we say end unverified anonymity on our networks and close the SIM swapping gaps. To our investigative task force, the members of the police and the ONDCP, we need to have an instantaneous two-way intelligence loop fed by high-quality data from the Financial Intelligence Unit and our commercial banks to build prosecutorial cases despite international barriers. And to our regulatory and supervisory authorities, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank does not simply set the rules banks operate under. It must actively supervise their execution, holding institutions accountable for the speed and integrity of their response, and using emerging mechanisms such as the Office of Financial Conduct to give our citizens a clear, empowered channel for consumer protection and redress. And to you, the citizens, we must keep arming you with clear, aggressive awareness to recognize these traps before the gate is opened, and inform citizens who hangs up the phone is worth more than any system built to recover money after it's already gone. None of these 5 pillars, the banks, telecommunication service providers, law enforcement, regulators, citizens, can succeed alone. This is why tonight is not simply a briefing. It's the beginning of a standing, coordinated partnership. And in conclusion, I say let this national forum mark the end of fragmented, reactive procedures. Let us use this platform tonight to build an impenetrable, localized shield for our people's wealth and our country's financial integrity. As the theme for this forum reminds us, scams are getting smarter. It is time for us to get smarter too. Thank you, and I look forward to a robust discussion.
Lieutenant Colonel Edward Croft there. Spoken like a true law enforcement professional, I almost felt like I needed to get my own act in order, although I'm not a member of the community. All right, it's time to start our panels this evening. The way the panels will work, we will invite a few panelists to the fore. We'll tell you about their expertise, and they will answer a list of questions. Now, each of the panelists will have 90 seconds to 2 minutes to answer the question, so we do not intend for the conversations to drag on. In fact, I'm terming it a little bit of speed dating because we want to get the panels up, have them 20 minutes discuss the issues at hand before we get another panel up to the fore here. You have been passed, or will be passed, I'm sure, some bits of paper to write some questions, and then they'll be collected at the end. We want to ensure that we protect you this evening, ladies and gentlemen, and to protect institutions as well. So I will encourage you when asking your questions to use very generic terms. For example, my bank, or my telecoms provider. For example, as I was explaining to someone the other day, my bank has me changing my passwords every month, and I'm almost forgetting what that password is. Now, you have no idea what bank that is unless you work at that bank, because you know exactly who I'm talking about. Or I may say that my telecoms provider has me, or has sold my contact information to someone else, or I might say my bank has lost my, whatever it is you're saying, just use a generic term so that we don't identify and defame or put ourselves up in harm's way. Let's leave it at that this evening. So let's get our panels started. I will now invite our first series of panelists, Mrs. Livia Bertine Mack, who is the Deputy Director of the Anti-Money Laundering Supervisory Unit within the Financial Sector Supervision Department at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, to come to join us up on the rostrum. We now invite Mrs. Sonia Roberts-Carr as well, representative of the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Banking Association and Chief Operations Officer at ECAB. Thank you very much, Patrice. And Mr. Clement Samuel will join us as well. He's a Business Development Manager for Liberty Caribbean, trading as Flow. Welcome, panelists. Are we all comfortable? Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. Just turn your mics on and just respond to me. Are you okay? Let me turn the mics on so we can hear you.
Testing.
Testing. Just I'm not hearing you.
Testing.
Oh, now I'm hearing you. All right. So the idea here is that we use as little jargon as possible so that we all understand the conversation. Now, some of us are within the fraternities, but we just want to make sure that those within the room who are not, and those joining us online, whether live or who will see this in this recorded fashion, they're able to understand exactly what's being said this evening. So let's start with Mrs. Bertine Mack. Let's start your question here. As we're talking about cyber risks, what is cyber-enabled fraud? So explain what that is in its entirety for us within 2 minutes. And also tell us what trends you're seeing within the Caribbean generally, and particularly within the Eastern Caribbean, so we can bring that conversation home.
Okay, so pleasant good afternoon to all joining us in person and online. A warm welcome to you. And I thank persons for taking the time out to join on these important discussions this afternoon. So that doesn't count in my 2 minutes. Nonetheless, let us think in very simple terms what is cyber-enabled fraud. It is fraud. That is the act of being deceived for one to give of themselves, that being their money, their financings, their account information. The challenge with cyber-enabled fraud is that it is utilizing tools that we have now facilitated into our everyday life. So they're being done online. They're being done with your phones, your social media, your emails. That is the avenues that they are targeting for customers. And as a result, we need to be very vigilant. So I will tell you about some typologies that we're seeing. And when we speak of typologies, we are speaking about the trends we are seeing across as it relates to cyber-enabled fraud. You will hear quite a bit as the discussions pursue here. So we often say within the Financial Sector Supervision Department that there is an issue affecting us in the region. And what is this? You have smishing, vishing, phishing, quishing. It's all ishing when we want to be relaxing. So phishing is where they utilize your emails. And so they would send you an email, perhaps making a promise of certain things to you as a customer. Click on this link, put in your credentials. Smishing, they send it to you via text. The vishing, they call you. They get information. They use your voice against you to utilize that information to access your information. And the question, which is rather new across the region, is where they utilize the barcodes, where you scan those, and then you download the malicious software. So let's be very real with ourselves. The criminals and the bad actors, they are quite competent in what they're doing. And so they're listening to us. They're listening right now. We know that. We know you're there. They're listening. They're hearing. They're watching what we're doing. And so today, the objective of today is to see what we can do as a country and as a region to combat that. And this is not new. It is not unique to Antigua. Unfortunately, we have to sit here and say that. The issue of cyber-enabled fraud is widespread globally. In March of this year, the Financial Action Task Force issued a report, and that is a standard-setting body for countries to meet minimum standards. And they recorded 90% of money laundering cases being as a result of cyber-enabled fraud. So this is the extent to the issue that we're dealing with, not only in Antigua, across the Caribbean region, but globally. That's my 2 minutes.
And you took 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your response there, Mrs. Ratin Mack. Let's get to Mrs. Roberts Carr now. And Carter, sorry. And, you know, it takes me back to when my grandmother used to not want to curse and to use some, you know, words to, some euphemisms. So forgive me if I use ishing from here on out. Mrs. Roberts Carter, let's talk about online banking. A lot of us use the apps. A lot of us, if not all of us, have debit cards and credit cards. What are some of the ways that you are seeing that criminals are trying to exploit us when we use these cards? And what are some of the recommendations or some of the warning signs you should be looking for before we even get to recommendations?
Digital banking is a part of our everyday life right now. So with increasing security on bank platforms, criminals are constantly looking for new ways basically to exploit the trust of persons. And we heard a lot of that earlier. So they now, rather than touching the technology, they're turning to persons. So they're looking at people rather than systems. And instead of trying to hack a bank system, they pick on persons and trick them into just giving me the information. We heard about the ishing, so I'm not going to go through the different types already. So they are the ishings. Now when we look to the card side, we also have persons and cards being compromised because the different typologies. For example, you have skimming devices being placed on ATMs, point-of-sale devices, and even at gas station pumps. Basically, you also may have a data breach. So we all use our cards online now at purchases, companies we know we're comfortable with. But if there's a data breach in that company now, that persons get the information for your card, they then use it online, or they embed it into a fake card, use it at an ATM and take cash. So those are cases now when we turn to seeing the cards also being compromised. So some of the warning signs, which are often subtle but consistent. You should watch out for unexpected messages claiming there's an urgent problem with your account or that's putting pressure to act immediately. Request to click links, calls asking for your email address, username, password, PINs, CVVs on your card, or a one-time code, or to download an attachment. New device login alerts or transaction alerts that you don't recognize. These are key things that should prompt you to action. Compromised email accounts where you lose access to your accounts, and particularly pay attention to if you know you have other apps, passwords to other apps linked to that mailbox, pay attention to that as well. And messages sometimes that would flag where there's poor grammar or unusual address that is used, that's a red flag. So the best protection is a combination of awareness and good security habits. Use strong, unique passwords, cap and small letters, numbers, special characters, enable multi-factor authentication. Keep banking apps up to date and your devices as well, not just the apps. Monitor your account and card activity regularly, and I'm going to recommend that you look at it daily in the environment we're in right now. Ensure you have transaction alerts enabled, and because you need to receive those prompt notifications. If you're not looking in the email, at least you'll hear an alert. And contact your bank immediately, directly using the number the bank has given you when you see these unknown activities or get one of the ishing calls, texts, or emails. Ultimately, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Financial institutions invest in security to protect you, but informed and vigilant customers remain the strongest defense against fraud. It's a good rule of thumb to remember as well. Your financial institution will never ask you to share information that you use to access your accounts.
All right, very comprehensive. I will tell you that I do not like, personally, I don't like alerts. It usually signifies there's money leaving my account. I'm being very serious and honest here. But you're saying it's important for security reasons?
Very, very important.
I'll consider it going forward. Thank you very much. Mr. Samuel, your turn. We want to ask you about how you see technology changing over the last few years and how perhaps that's opened us up to some of these fraudsters. How are you seeing that they're using the mobile and internet service providers to target us?
Okay. First of all, the thing I want to mention is that criminals have always used technology to try and get ahead of the curve. So this is not something new. But I think that the phenomenon that we're seeing now is that with the introduction of mobile phones and with the internet, that there are three things that they have, right? They have speed, they have automation, right? And they have persistence, scale, right? They can use the internet, so whereas before they could probably say, they say there are 100 people here, they can use AI and they can use the technology to do that exercise, one of these issuing exercises in all of you in less than 1 minute. And that is what they have for you. In terms of what are some of the things that we are seeing, yes, all the issues, and I'm not going to go into that, but what we're seeing is they are trying to erode that trust ecosystem. So what they're doing is they give you a call on WhatsApp. They tell you about a Zoom meeting which you're supposed to attend. And all they've got to do is you've got to click this link to get it to your calendar. And once you do that, they take over your phone. And once they take over the phone, they're looking for the passwords that you've got and that you have saved. Any information that they can use to try and intercept these one-time passwords coming from your bank. And once they do that, then say goodbye to the little money that you've saved. But the one point that I also want to mention, because I've heard what's being said so far, and there's a lot being focused on the consumer. Now, what I want to say to you is that cybersecurity from a business point of view is real and has been real in Antigua for a very long time. So we've had in Antigua for many years denial of service attacks. Do you remember all those gaming companies that we had? And they would be making a lot of money during Super Bowl. And what would happen is cyber criminals would get access to their servers and basically say to them, you pay us $1 million or we shut you down. Now, what I find very interesting is that we are focusing a lot on what the consumer has to do, but we're still seeing that many businesses, when they suffer these kind of attacks, there's a little bit of shame and they do not want to release that information. If we're going to do what the minister says and what Colonel Croft says, and this is something that all of us are in together, it means that there has to be transparency on all sides. That's it.
You got the biggest hands in the room clapping you. Don't worry, Mr. Samuel. You're all right. All right. Let's see if you have any moderated questions for this panel. Do you have any online or in the room? Not just yet. I'll invite you each to do 30 seconds of a quick wrap-up, a quick synopsis before we move to the next panel. There is a. All right. All right. After giving them 30 seconds, we'll have it collected, all right? She's just writing it down as we speak. Yes, 30 seconds.
Thank you. And I think what I would like to leave in ending this panel discussion, and perhaps just to summarize what was communicated here in the terms and in the spirit of transparency and some of the red flags that were highlighted. To those in the room, to those online, if something seems wrong, it just might be. You need to identify, stop, identify, verify, and report. And that is the spirit of transparency. If we do not know it's happening, it's very difficult to put controls in place to mitigate the risk that is impacting us. And you speak of the shame, and I think that is a very valid point to bring forth. if I am a victim, most likely I might be embarrassed. Look at me, whole regulator, and you were a victim of fraud. And I may not want to report that, but it's important for that information to be put forward so the authorities can do the necessary investigations where necessary. But most importantly, you can identify the pattern of behavior so we can know that we are being attacked. And we can only do that with the continued collaboration.
All right, Mrs. Roberts-Carter.
Just to add to what my co-panelist said here, I'm going to stress again that it's very important that we all focus on protecting our devices and having safe, secure habits. And I want to also add to that that is very key, as was mentioned, report, report, report. Verify, verify, verify. All of your institutions are here to assist you. If anything, it could just be some little nudge said, but you're not sure, don't feel ashamed, reach out to us, call, verify, and let us look into anything. Everybody is trying different means, so we do encourage you. Protect your devices, protect your accounts, do your alerts, make sure you're monitoring, because that's key, and engage your financial institutions right away.
All right, Mr. Samuel.
Yes, I think I'd like to, add to what all my colleagues have mentioned. But I think that we particularly have to be wary for the older individuals in our society. I think of my 92-year-old mother, very active, but we are pushing her to use the latest technology. And I think it's probably a little bit unrealistic to think that this sector of the society will have the same vigilance and know-how as some of the rest of us. And we have got to try and build in some safeguards for these persons.
All right, excellent. While waiting questions, just to endorse what was said, Mrs. Roberts-Carter said, protect your devices. Husbands, never feel guilty again about having locks on your phones, because we need... This is what the expert has said. This is not my words. Protect your devices. Mrs. Roberts-Carter, I will quote you from now until the day I die. Carter, sorry. Yes. All right, Ms. Martin, you have questions for us? All right, questions are forthcoming. We'll take one for this panel. Oh, the minister has a question, Ms. Martin. Will you allow him to ask his question, or he needs to write it? You allow him? Okay. So, Mr. Minister, Mr. Nicholas. Indeed.
Yeah, the question is to Mr. Samuel. He and I both have the experience in the given environment. What's your specific recommendation to a business who has been put in that position where the database has been compromised, has been stolen, or have been captured, and a ransom is sought? What is the first bit of advice would be proffered to that particular business?
I think I would refer to my colleague. It has to do with reporting. Even though the horse has bolted, right? And even in the short term, where you can think, okay, I can afford it, let me pay and get the information, what will happen is that you're setting yourself up for another attack, right? And that is going to be worse. So my advice to you would be, and I'm not going to be vendor specific here now, but there are many telecommunication providers who will do cybersecurity assessments for you and will ensure that you have penetration testing, EDR, SIEM, the whole host of stuff. But the thing to do is you've got to do this before. So it makes no, like remember growing up, you had persons asking women to go and check yearly and have your mammogram test, right? It is just so in business. You have got to have your monthly, bi-yearly, yearly cybersecurity checks, and you make sure that you're resilient. Because whatever you have implemented now, remember they said, they're listening, they're working. So whatever fix you put in now, in 2 days, it could be obsolete. So it's an ongoing process.
All right. Thank you so much. Ms. Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Our first question, are financial institutions purchasing cybersecurity insurance? Are financial institutions purchasing cybersecurity insurance?
So I perhaps would want to take this one as a regulator. Just to indicate, and we were very clear in beginning those discussions, we are not going to give any institution-specific information. And so there are standards that are set out for our financial institutions. These are laid out either under the Banking Act or rules through what we call our prudential standards, and so our financial institutions, and that is public information. You could go on our website to look at those. Our financial institutions are required to maintain certain standards to ensure that they are stable as institutions, and as regulators, we monitor to ensure that they are adhering to those standards.
All right. One more question, Ms. Martin.
Two more.
You have two more, okay.
Are banks using voice activation? How does a cell phone translate to banking information or funds being hacked? Are banks using voice activation? How does a call translate to banking information or funds being hacked?
In terms of voice activation, I am not fully clear on the question, but from the perspective that I'm looking at it, banks generally don't take information from customers over the phone, transactional, to process a transaction, unless there's another tier of verification that they can do with a customer. So from that perspective, if that's the way persons are going, you have other independent ways, confirmation code, voice, dual confirmation, before you do transactions with customers. So I do hope I addressed the question accurately.
What about cases where no links are clicked, or if it's a call that has been used, after a few seconds, the person's account is still accessed? What are the banks doing to have better security for their clients?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, please repeat, Ms. Martin. It's a very long question.
What about in cases where no links are clicked on, or if it's a call that has been ended after a few seconds, the person's account is still accessed? In situations such as those, what are the banks doing to have better security for their clients?
So we would have to look at each instance individually and do a thorough investigation to see how access was still gained, even though the customer may not have shared information, as you said, click a link, or they ended the call. It could be that there was a compromise on the device and they got the information, but again, without knowing full details on the situation, we can't say. And what all banks do, whenever there's a report of an incident, there is a thorough investigation done. There's a collaboration with a number of persons, the different authorities as well, from the FIU to the cyber unit police, where we do a thorough investigation to figure out, okay, where, how this compromise may have happened. So I can't speak to the exact example there, but if there was access gained to the account, there was some point that a compromise or breach did happen.
And to that point, Mrs. Roberts-Carter, what about if I have already suffered a significant loss in the thousands? And that is to your point of it being done at some point of interaction. What about if I have already suffered a significant loss in the thousands?
Again, a bit brief on the information there, but from the question asked, there is a process, as I continue in the process of the incident, where we work with all the authorities, and depending on the individual circumstances, they would be handled differently. So I can't prescribe on that particular instance, but I can reassure you, the institutions, the regulatory authorities, we all work together with the ultimate goal, and the police, law enforcement, the ultimate goal to recover the funds for the customer.
To all banks, so Mrs. Roberts-Carter, on behalf of all the banks, is there someone available to take my call if there's a problem Saturday at 10 p.m., or if I see that something has been done when the banks are already closed?
Okay, So a few of the banks do have call centers, some varied hours. So there are some weekends, some may go up to 10, some maybe 24 hour. So you have that avenue. I know in a later conversation and discussions will come up where there are other avenues that we have been worked on. There's a task force that's now put together, cyber-enabled task force in Antigua, Barbuda with the collaborative team, which you will hear more about in the other sessions, where we'll have more information out on that to customers, where there's more avenues for prompt reporting and prompt attention collectively by the group. So some more information is coming on that, but the current avenues will be those call centers that operate.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martin. A round of applause for our first set of panelists this hour, Mrs. Livia Burton-Mack, Mrs. Sonia Roberts-Carr, and Mr. Clement Samuel. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We will have our next panel on protecting customers and building trust. So this panel will deal with protecting customers and building trust. We just got a better understanding of cybersecurity and cyber-related fraud. For this panel, please help me welcome Mrs. Gordina Hector Morel, Director of Cybersecurity within the Ministry of ICTs. We also have Mr. Vaughn Brathwaite, representing the Antigua Barbuda Municipal Banking Association. He's also Chief Operations and Strategy Officer at ACB. Good, sir. And Mr. Aziz Dumith, Chief Information and Strategy Officer at ACT, Antigua Computer Technology. Okay, so as just to repeat, this panel is on protecting customers and building trust. We'll ask a series of questions. I'll repeat the rules, 2 minutes or thereabouts for an answer, and then we'll field some questions from the room or online. Mrs. Morel, let's start with you. Mrs. Hector Morel, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Let me read the question as it's stated here. What are some of the most common fraud scenarios being reported or observed by the Ministry of Information and Communication Technologies, and how should individuals and or institutions respond? What specific role does the ministry play at the national level to help combat cyber-enabled fraud? So the question really is, what are we seeing, what are we finding that's being reported or observed? How should individuals and businesses respond? And what role does the ministry play? So a three-tiered question there for you.
Thank you, Ursula. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, carrying on from the first panel, there are the ISHIN. Yes. So basically, what we're finding is that you have legitimate organizations that are being impersonated, and the persons are being tricked into sharing their credentials. That results in financial losses for individuals. And also for the institutions as well, we would have what you call reputational damage. There are also some, although the issue and the increase, there are also some ransomware, and there's some business email compromise. And for the ransomware, normally the advice is not to pay, because once you pay, you would have rewarded the criminals, and bet your bottom dollar they're gonna come back for more. So the advice is normally that you don't pay the ransom. However, organizations will need to ensure that they have their backups and that their backup themselves are not compromised. For individuals and for organizations as well, we speak of having multi-factor authentication, MFAs. And it was mentioned earlier, we talk about having strong passwords we talk about ensuring that your devices and your softwares are updated. One of the things that I want to stress is that for individuals, I would recommend that you monitor your account regularly. Monitor your account regularly. For organizations need to realize that they need to remove the silos that exist within the organization between their cybersecurity department and their fraud department. So, in all cases, there needs to be cooperation and collaboration. And organizations will therefore need to leverage the threat intelligence to ensure that you do some real-time monitoring, you get involved in customer education, as well as education of your staff in terms of identifying the indicators of these cyber-enabled crimes. So basically what we'd want is there to be a disruption of the activity, thereby reducing the financial losses as well as the reputational damage. If it's one thing I would want to leave with the individuals is that I would like to borrow from the zero trust principle and to say to individuals, never trust. Always verify before you act. There's the urgency. Stop. Call the organization before you act. So that is what I would want to leave with the audience.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Hector Morel. I'm going to come back to ask you then a quick question about the information that the government has on our behalf and how we're protecting that and what safeguards we have in place there. I don't want my date of birth changed unless it's to be someone younger than older, if you know what I mean. Mr. Dumith, let's keep on coming to you, Mr. Dumith, in terms of what practical tools and technologies do we have from your perspective that are available today to help individuals and our customers, our companies better protect their personal and financial information? That's the question I want to ask there.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So when people hear cybersecurity tools, they usually imagine an expensive software, complicated technology, or something designed only for a large company. But the most important cybersecurity tool available today is actually completely free. And it takes less than an hour to set up. It's knowledge and awareness. And you're setting it up right now. At ACT, we believe our mission is to bring our community into the future. To help everyone navigate that digital future safely, we created a simple idea called Cyber Smart. Each letter in the word SMART represents one simple step you can take for free to better protect yourself, your money, and your personal information. So whenever you're using technology, remember, be smart. S stands for secure your devices. When your phone or computer tells you there's a security update, don't keep pressing, remind me later. Install it. Make sure your computer has antivirus protection and that it stays updated. And do not leave your phone or computer unlocked. Protect it with a secure PIN, password, fingerprint, or Face ID. And know 1234 0000 or your child's birthday does not count. M means manage your passwords. Today, almost everything is online. It makes life faster, easier, and more convenient. And honestly, I'm sure most of us couldn't imagine life without it. But that convenience also means it's faster and easier for attackers as well. Does that mean we shouldn't do anything online? Of course not. Driving has risks, but we still drive. But we wear a seatbelt and we pay attention. Technology is no different. Enjoy the convenience, but protect yourself while using it. one of the most important ways to do that is properly managing your passwords. Many people use the same password to access everything. The password for your Walmart account should not be the same password for your online banking. And no, adding an exclamation mark or number 1 at the end doesn't make it a new secure password. There are over a dozen apps which can provide you a unique password for every account. They're securely stored and encrypted, so you don't need to memorize all of them. This way, one data breach of your password cannot allow attackers to unlock the rest of your digital life. A stands for authenticate everything. Have you ever logged into your account and received the message, would you like to turn on two-factor authentication? And what do most of us do? Maybe later. Well, clicking set up now can actually make you 99% less likely to have your account compromised. Two-factor authentication can take different forms. There's apps like Microsoft Authenticator, a fingerprint scan or a passkey, or a one-time password sent by SMS. At the end, they accomplish the same goal. They provide a second verification that the person logging into your account is actually you. But remember, this code is for you. So the next time you receive a call asking you for the code that just popped up on your phone, never share it, especially if they contacted you first. That code is the only thing standing between them and your account. R, we said it a lot, report suspicious activity. If you receive a strange email, a suspicious phone call, or notice something unusual on one of your accounts, don't ignore it. You should immediately notify your company, financial institution, and if appropriate, law enforcement. It might be nothing, but by speaking up quickly, you can help protect yourself, prevent someone else from your community from being the next victim. And finally, T, think before you click. Before clicking a link, opening an attachment, or sharing personal information, pause. Ask yourself, what are they really trying to make me do? And why do I need to do it right now? Attackers use fear, urgency, curiosity, or trust to manipulate you. So, the next time somebody offers you $1 million in exchange for your bank account information, I'm sorry, it's probably not real. So in summary, everybody please, if there's one thing you remember, be cyber smart. 1, secure your devices. 2, manage your passwords. 3, authenticate everything. 4, report suspicious activity. And 5, think before you click. These 5 simple steps can help protect you, your money, and your personal information. Thank you.
Thank you. And you took 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Thank you, sir. I'm going to come back to ask you another question about password managers, because I had a conversation with Mrs. Morell, and I told her I'm getting to the stage where I have to use one password for everything. And she said, no, you can't do that. You need to use the password manager if you have to. What if I don't trust the password manager? If I give the password manager all my passwords, that's a problem I need to talk to you about, okay? So we'll ask you about that later. Let's go to Mr. Rathwaite now. A series of questions for you. I'll ask you one at a time, if you don't mind. If you have questions, please. Yes, sir, you may. If you have questions, you can start writing them now so we can collect them by the end of this series of questions. So, Mr. Brathwaite, first question, we talk about the shared responsibility. It's my responsibility, the bank's responsibility, the telecom provider's responsibility to protect our data, to protect our monies, etc. What measures are banks taking, be very clear with us now, to make sure that our monies, our information, they are safe? That's my first question to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so basically, we do a number of things, all right? And I'll try to keep it very simple. And we talked about multi-factor authentication. All right, that's one of the things where password alone doesn't get you in anymore. You have to have a second layer. So that's a one-time code, which we would have explained before. We have password and PIN controls. And of course, you have to use strong passwords. You have to make sure it's not a 000 or 1, 2, 3, 4, as my good colleague would have said before. Secret questions. We have secret questions for your account recovery. And the critical word is secret. all right? Keep it for yourself. Don't share it with everyone else. We also have transaction limits. Many of the banks of institutions have financial transaction limits and velocity limits based on the type of transaction that you do. We also have what they call CAD controls. So you have certain controls on the MasterCard and Visa, which protects you as a card user. So when you do a transaction, depending on what site, it will give you a one-time password via your email or your SMS before that transaction becomes authenticated. All right? As a bank as well, we do a number of other things in the background from a cybersecurity perspective. We do pen tests and a number of other things we do to make sure that our data is secure. Right?
All right. I will tell you that I've noticed that in recent days you've been asking for these codes when making purchases online. I will admit I have become somewhat of a shopping junkie, and maybe you've noticed the changes in my online activities, so maybe that's why we're noting that. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that extra step. In terms of best practices, when we're shopping online, when we're using our ATMs, what are some of the best practices for customers?
Well, right. So in terms of best practices, you really and truly, when you're shopping online, you should first of all make sure you're using a trusted site. All right. And as you know, I know most persons like the Amazon. The Amazon is one of the critical ones, and it's a well-known site. But you have to make sure that with whatever you're doing, you have that limitation. You have your alerts turned on at your from your online perspective, so you know exactly that whatever transaction you're doing, it's bona fide. You also have to make sure that you don't go on those illegitimate sites and give out that your card information. All right, and you may ask, what is legitimate sites? It has to be a site with a HTTPS. It has to be a secured site. All right, it must not be any site that don't have certain security. And most of them they have certain what they would put what they call verified by Visa at the front of their sites, so you know for sure that site is secure. So the critical thing is to make sure that you don't go to sites that is not necessarily illegitimate in that respect.
Okay, and my final question is about what happens on the back end. Should I fall victim to fraud, I lose monies, I make a report to my bank, why isn't the reimbursement automatic? That's first, because I want my money back,
yes,
for want of a better term. And what are you doing to collaborate with other stakeholders, other teams behind the scenes to make sure, or to verify the report first of all, and then to see if any redress can be given?
Right, so that one is a very, I know it's one that's a hard pill to swallow for many persons, especially if you'd have been a victim, fall victim to the social engineering. All right, the critical thing really, as soon as you recognize that there's something happening, you report it. All right, and of course you report it to the bank through its authorized channel. Do not call numbers that you don't know. Make sure it's a number that's either in the back of your card or a number that the bank or your institution publishes online. All right, and once you make that call and you report it to us or to the necessary institutions, we will take action at the same point. We'll block your account. All right, we will start the investigation process. We'll make a report to the ONDCP and the CID and the FAU and the other regulators in the background. All right, and those things take time. We do have to do a thorough investigation internally. We have to understand exactly what are the typology, where did that compromise occur really from the client perspective. We even do our own internal checks as well to make sure it's not from our end. So the investigation takes time. I think one of the things that we have to be very real about is that I think previously we were not too communicative in many cases. So I think the whole idea of this whole task force and where we are right now is to make sure that we tighten all the various communication gaps. So when things happen, when our clients come to us, we're able to report in a much more faster manner so that at least once you report it within a certain time period and we're able to act fast, we're able to recover in the event that you do have a loss situation.
All right. While we're waiting for questions at the back, let me just ask my very quick follow-up question. So 30 seconds to answer. Mrs. Dumit, let's start with you about password managers. Is that something that you recommend? What are some of the risks there, or you wholly endorse it?
So I'll tell you a secret. I have 1Password. But the password app I use is called 1Password. And the way it works is essentially when you set up the account, it creates a private key on your device. So even the company doesn't know what your actual password is. The only way to unlock it is you have a specific key on your device. So for example, at the very beginning, I create this one super long password that I promise you nobody in the world will ever guess. And that's essentially my first instance of recording it. I then get a 24-digit long super thing that I put inside of my safe, that this is my only way to access it if I ever forget my initial password. Any other application, website, app that I need to open, like access that vault before, I either need to authenticate it via my face on my existing application, or I need to go to my safe and grab that 24-long key. So there is a risk. The risk is that if I lose that piece of paper and for some reason I forget my password, I literally lose everything. So, but you just need to be kind of aware of that and measure the risk versus the reward. So, yeah.
All right. I'll talk more about that with you when we're having coffee afterwards, because I need that step. Mrs. Hector Morel, I was asking about the government and ensuring that, for example, the government is going digital. You know, all our records now are being digitized. What are we doing from that perspective to safeguard what we have?
So from the government's perspective, we are looking at creating a culture of cybersecurity within Antigua and Barbuda. Knowledge is power. If persons are not aware, then they can't act accordingly. So we think that creating that awareness is critical in what we're doing. We are setting up the incident response team, and that incident response team looks at the government systems to ensure that there are no vulnerabilities. And if there are, work on getting them sorted. We also look at setting up, and Minister mentioned it, a national incidents response team, which will involve other stakeholders, law enforcement, financial institutions, the service providers, academia, NGOs. Cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility, everybody's business. So all of us have a part to play. Ensuring that we're strengthening the legislation. So we are exploring working with our international partners in terms of acceding to some of the conventions that will be able to allow us to get assistance when some of these cyber crimes take place that we cannot solve within Antigua. Because it's transnational, it may involve a perpetrator in another jurisdiction. And collaborating or cooperating with other organizations globally will help us to be able to do that. So we are looking at acceding to certain conventions. There's the Budapest Convention. I'm sure you would have heard them mention, the government mention in in Parliament, that we are looking to accede to the Budapest Convention. There is the UN Convention against the cybercrime. And for cybersecurity, there's the UN Global Mechanism on the use of ICT in cyberspace. And so we are exploring those in order to help to strengthen our resilience in Antigua and Barbuda.
All right, thank you. Very quick question, Mr. Brathwaite, before we get to Ms. Martin. I want to dispel this myth, if it is a myth. I've always heard it's easier to get your money back if you've lost it on a credit card than a debit card.
Yes, it's better you have a credit card than a debit card, for real. So I would say get your credit card from your local institution.
They're in the room. Why would you say that? I cut up the last one I had, to be honest. That was more than 10 years ago. But thank you very much for that response. Ms. Martin, your questions.
Mr. Charles Jr., since you said that husbands should protect their phones, the questions have been pouring in.
That's not the line of discussion we wanted to have tonight, to be honest.
So we have quite a few questions, and of course we won't be able to address every single question in this particular forum, but there will be an opportunity to ask your questions directly to the panelists outside after this evening's proceedings. Can banks offer Google Authenticator, fraud recognition, and email authentication before digital transactions? Can banks offer Google Authenticator, fraud recognition, and email authentication before digital transactions?
Who wants to take that? Mr. Brathwaite? I think that's your question.
Yes, I would say yes. And it all depends on, based on the financial institution's direction, because there are different types of authentication. You have the Google Authenticator, as the client is stating. All right, Google is a third-party provider. You also have, you can have the multi-factor authentication through either SMS or your email. And there's also something called what they call push, not to be too technical, where you can push it via the device's notification, which is not necessarily, well, I don't want to say which is high or low in that respect, but there are different levels of risk in using different type of authentication, all right? And then there's also the option where you can have what they call the in-app authentication, meaning that your app does the authentication, which is the preferred direction in general cases because it's managed between the app and the bank in that respect, so you're able to keep it tight when you have to rely on...
Never trust, always verify. That's my advice. You cannot go wrong. In terms of someone calling and sounding like somebody from your financial institution, don't be afraid to just stop the person and you make other persons think that when you have issues with WhatsApp, that the service providers here can provide you with the information. That is not the case. And so if somebody hack you through WhatsApp, I don't see what the service providers here will be able to do for you. That's a social media platform. That's a different type of provider.
Mr. Samuel will ask you to verify that afterwards. Yeah, you have to stick around. All right. Ms. Martin? Yes.
There's a customer in the room that had an issue. It has been resolved only partially, so we're asking that person to speak with the bank representatives after. Okay. It is a personal question about something that happened to them. They've been able to retrieve a percentage of it. We're asking that person to speak to their bank's representative after. Okay.
That's the line of questioning. Thank you so much, Ms. Martin. Really, really appreciate it. Panelists, I need for you to adhere to my 15-second limit now for a wrap-up. Very quickly. Closing. Mr. Dumit, we'll start with you before we get back down the end to Mrs. Hector Morel.
Since I went over last time, I'll be very short.
I appreciate it, sir.
Remember, be smart. All right? Thank you.
Somebody clap that. Okay. Mr. Brathwaite.
Yes, well, for me, from our side, definitely it's protection from all angles. We as institutions have to take responsibility, but also from a client perspective, we expect that it has to be done on both sides. So, as I would want to reiterate, make sure you have your biometrics turned on your device. Make sure you have biometrics on your banking app, if possible, and make sure you have MFA on your email, because once your email gets compromised, they have access to everything, literally.
All right, and Mrs. Hector Morel?
So as cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility, we all need to play our part, individuals, as well as the government, as well as the institutions. And I reiterate the zero trust principle. Never trust, always verify before you act.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our second panel this evening. Thank you so much to Mr. Dumit, Mr. Brathwaite, and Mrs. Hector Morel. Of course, that panel was on protecting customers and building trust. Our next panel will deal with the legal and regulatory response. And we will invite our three panelists to the podium now. Assistant Superintendent of Police Kelvin Thompson from the Royal Police Force of Antigua, Barbuda. Is he in the room with us? Yes, he is. Lieutenant Colonel Edward Croft is joining us as well, Director of the Financial Intelligence Unit at the ONDCP. You can file for overtime with Mrs. Richardson, Lieutenant Colonel. And Dr. Tracy Polias, who's joining us. She's the Chief Director of Policy within the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. I didn't do this with the last panel, but may I ask you to just test your microphone just to make sure that we are hearing you clearly?
Testing, testing. Testing.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
Good evening.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Croft, Dr. Polios, sit for us.
Testing.
Should it be green? Yes. It's green. Let's check once more.
Testing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, let's start with ASP Thompson from the Royal Police Force of Antigua Barbuda. Welcome, sir. Now, I like having police officers answer questions. If someone believes that they become the victim of cyber-enabled fraud, what should they do immediately from your perspective? And what happens after a report is made? And I want for you to include what kind of information would you need when that individual is making that report. Okay, over to you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. When someone suspects that they've been defrauded or even an attempt, the first step I would advise is that based on the typologies, based on what we've been experiencing, if someone calls you for banking information, you should cease all communication with that person. Cease all communication. Do not respond to any calls. Do not respond to emails or anything like that. And then you should contact your bank immediately, and let your bank know exactly what has transpired. If necessary, you need to change passwords and security credentials. If you would have given out information or fraud has been committed, you need to preserve the evidence. If you need to take screenshots of whatever email or message that have been sent by SMS, you need to screenshot those, take note of the phone numbers that call you. You need to then report the matter to the police as soon as possible. And then you need also to notify the relevant service communication providers. That is, if the fraud entails a service provider compromise. You need to be, and this is very, very important, because from what we've seen, sometimes a victim, because you need to be very honest with your report. When you come to the police, some people are embarrassed because of their experience, and they try to give us limited information. And in order for us to build a good case, we have to be very thorough. You have technology that can verify certain things, and so don't give us half information. We want the full, tell us everything. Some reporters may feel that we are a bit intrusive, or we might be investigating them and not the fraudsters. We do that because our function as investigators is to, first of all, find the truth. It doesn't matter. We're not picking on the person making the report. We want the truth, because at the end of the day, when the matter goes to court, there might be information coming out of that that we are not aware of, and then the whole case goes down the chain. There is no particular reporting requirement, right? Once you discover that you have been defrauded, you simply need to come to the police and make a report. You need not have the evidence that I just mentioned. Those things can be obtained afterwards. The important thing is to get to the police as quickly as possible. I can give you an example. We've got a report from an individual, and by the time the person went to the bank and was speaking to the bank clerk to stop to tell the bank clerk about the transaction, while there was another transaction taking place. So speed is very, very important. You don't need to have an abundance of material to come to the police, essentially. So we will need to have, for instance, the information such as your account number, your name, your address, any information pertaining to your account will be necessary. Okay, that's
The most pregnant pause ever. Thank you very much, ASP. Lieutenant Colonel Croft, thank you for joining us for this panel. My simple question is, what's the role of the ONDCP here in this affair? You lead an office, and we hear you talking about lots of drug fines, etc. So, what's your role in dealing with fraud and cyber-related events?
Once again, good evening to the distinguished panelists and, of course, those who are listening and viewing. First of all, the ONDCP is the financial intelligence unit of Antigua and Barbuda. And so we are responsible for the analysis of information that comes in. So in this particular case, we analyze information that is derived. We conduct an analysis to facilitate information or the generation of intelligence that would be useful either regulators, law enforcement, or the compliance unit in determining what observations are being made with a view of doing something about it. That thing that we do can be influenced in a number of areas. If it is that it's a crime that's taking place, then it may be passed on to the law enforcement. But if it's part of a compliance landscape, then it may be passed to a supervisory authority or regulator for them to collaborate with us. And we have collaborated with, in this case, we have collaborated with Eastern Caribbean Central Bank on, based on observations that we have made. We have gone into a number of financial institutions and conducted analysis on looking at their systems to see if their systems are robust and adequately structured to determine whether or not they can detect issues, money laundering, or systems that they ought to have in place. So a part of the process also, of course, is providing public information and outreach, making certain that the public is aware of some of the typologies. So we would have communicated some of those typologies to individuals, both from a public perspective, but from an institutional perspective. So we would communicate, let's say that we observe that certain activities are occurring. We want to provide that information to the bank so that they can be prepared and look out for those indicators and red flags so that when they see it, they know to prepare, they know to submit a suspicious activity report. So we are multifaceted in our approach. We also collaborate with the international community. And so if we observe that there are particular trends, we have a network both regionally and globally. And for instance, I will just share statistics with you that the Financial Action Task Force, which is the global standard setter for addressing issues of money laundering, they have 156 countries as a part of their network. and they reported recently in a document focusing on cyber-related crime that cyber-related crime is the most prevalent emerging crime trend that exists now. 90% of those 156 countries would have reported that the cyber-enabled crime is front and center of observations that have been made. So what we are seeing here is not unique to us, but it is a global phenomenon. It's a regional phenomenon. I also just researched or received some information from the cyber desk at the Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, which is the regional impacts. And they too are citing the same types of observations that cyber-enabled fraud is taking a particular prominent role in undermining the infrastructure. And so we have all of these particular aspects to cope with. And that is why it's important that this task force, because it's bigger than any one of us. And so that's why the collaborative effort and the partnership is most important. And so when we ask for information, we expect that information to be submitted. That would allow for us to be able to look at trends. Okay, we might not be able to stop this type, but if we understand the trend, we are able to then communicate that trend to others, and other persons and or institutions could benefit from the information provided from an intelligence perspective, in a nutshell.
So in other words, integrally involved.
Very much so.
Indeed. All right. Just a note of housekeeping. If you need to step out for a second, we're asking you to use any of the side doors here as opposed to the sliding doors, the glass doors, no, not the sliding doors at the front. All right. Dr. Polius, welcome back to Antigua.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. Always a pleasure. So 2 questions for you. The first is, how do regulators, for example, the ECCB, how do you help to strengthen trust in the financial system while at the same time encouraging consumers to be safe, for example, digital banking, etc.?
Good evening, everybody. So with respect to the ECCB as a financial regulator, we have 3 broad mandates as the central bank. The first is to keep the currency safe as the issuer of the EC dollar, so currency stability. The second is financial stability. We want to ensure that the financial system is sound and stable. And the third, which is really attached to the second, is payment system stability. We want to ensure that you could purchase your goods and services so that the payment system works effectively and does not grind to a halt. As the regulator for the financial system, we issue guidelines to our banks within the financial system, or those we call the licensed financial institutions, to ensure that they are in good financial health. So there will be guidelines related to capital, there will be guidelines related to liquidity, guidelines related to governance, your managers, they must be fit and proper. There are guidelines, as Livia would have mentioned, related to technology risk, which would directly relate to the matter at hand this evening, which is related to cyber crime. So we issue those standards and we support our banks in terms of meeting those standards, and we monitor and examine the banks on a regular basis to ensure that financial system is sound. And that work is called microprudential regulation. But we are now introducing what we call market conduct regulation, and that is really the extent to which the banks ensure that their consumers are protected. They provide adequate information to them for making decisions, that they ensure that there are opportunities for addressing their complaints and redress, that they provide appropriate financial services to them that are aligned to their needs, that are aligned to the needs of the market. So this type of regulation is called market conduct regulation, and it's very much aligned to the work that Livia is doing related to AML supervision. And with that type of supervision that will be introduced later this year in September, we are launching what we call the Office for Financial Conduct, and that will be a market conduct regulator for financial institutions licensed under the Banking Act.
great introduction to my next question, because I would have then asked, how is this office now going to help to strengthen consumer rights, consumer protection?
So the market conduct regulator is essentially a consumer protection regulator. We started the work against the backdrop of a lot of complaints about our LFIs. Not that we believe all of it, of course, because we are here working with the LFIs, but we want to ensure that we have a stronger relationship between our banks and our financial consumers. And the reason why we want to ensure that happens is because for the economy to grow, for the economic pie to become larger, we need the banks to be able to lend and strengthen their intermediation activities, what we call their lending activities, to businesses to ensure that the economy grows. And that cannot grow if trust is broken. That cannot grow if people revert to keeping their monies under their mattresses. And therefore, we are introducing the market conduct regulator to strengthen that relationship between banks and their clients, and to introduce consumer protection regulation, precisely because we notice that the incidence of frauds and scams are increasing, because banks are now changing the way they do business. They are leveraging ICT to provide financial services, and we need to ensure that financial consumers are protected. And we also need to ensure that financial consumers are not excluded, because there is a certain group of financial consumers who are very reticent, they are afraid of the technology, and they don't necessarily want to participate. And we want to ensure that the financial system continues to provide for those people as well. So that is why we are introducing the OFC.
Okay. All right. Questions from Ms. Martin from the floor.
And the question is to ASP Thompson. There have been several instances of fraud. However, we have not seen or heard of anyone being prosecuted. What are the plans to have the criminals brought to justice? There have been several instances of fraud. However, we have not seen or heard of anyone being prosecuted. What are the plans, if any, to bring criminals to justice?
Well, you would have heard Mr. Croft said that there is a team that is working on all of these matters. Initially, when these reports were made, we did not see the pattern developing. But once we identified the pattern, a joint investigative team has been put together. Fraud is a very complex crime, and it requires a lot of work behind the scene. I can tell you, from one transaction, there are a number of what we call beneficiaries. And so we have to engage with all of these people. I think the last time I checked, we have something like almost 100 beneficiaries and 20-something victims among all the banks. So this is a joint effort between the police and the ONDCP to engage with all of these people. As you know, once you made an arrest and you file your documents in the court, that's the process has started. And so it's for the police to get that case file ready. We don't want to put matters before the court and every month or so we want an adjournment. We want to make sure that we have the case together and then we file charges. So you may not see anything happening now, but I can tell you that we are working hard behind the scenes. And you'll be seeing some charges soon.
All right. We don't want to hear any no-case submissions either. We've been hearing a lot of that. And yes, Lieutenant Colonel, yes.
Contribute to that answer provided. I think I want persons to understand that we can approach this in a myopic way, whereby you pick off one victim or a group of individuals and a group of individuals. What we are seeing from a strategic point of view, it's a mechanism, an organized crime group who is doing something. And we're not interested in the individuals who are the front runners or the mules. We want to find those persons who are organizing this thing, and this takes time. It is not something that happens overnight, and so I know persons want a quick fix in responding to these things. But for this type of sophistication, understand it's going to take analysis, it's going to take team approach, it will take partnership, it will take interaction, and it will take adequate strategic planning to be able to go after the criminals in a particular way that would allow us to hold them accountable for their actions. And as best as practically possible, we want to ensure that the victims are compensated for the type of losses that they would have incurred. Pain and suffering also, but basically we want to make certain that the individuals who are behind the scenes, whether nationally or internationally, we're going to go after them and we're going to try and hold them accountable as best as we can.
This is more of a statement rather than a question. In recent times, churches in Antigua and Barbuda have been collecting tithes and offering through card machines and sharing bank account details for online banking. Can the conversations be extended to the church community as well?
I feel attacked here, but I will still ask the question. It's my church you're talking about, and all right. Who wants to take this question? Dr. Polios, you will attempt to answer.
Well, the church is a group of people, right? And so the admonitions that have gone before about how we manage our accounts and how we manage our habits, our digital habits, digital hygiene, still stands in terms of not sharing, not sharing your passcodes, not sharing your passwords, not sharing all of the information related to your financial accounts at your bank still stands. Not clicking links, not providing information to people who call. The information about we have just been admonished about verifying, verification before. So all of that still stands as members of the church. So while it is the church is a body, it is comprised of a group of people, and it is the individuals who are providing that information to the church, and they must also be wearing, even if it is happening in the context of a church.
And I think sometimes we're wary of terming the church a business, but as an institution, it needs to protect itself as well, I would suspect. Ms. Martin, any more?
Final question
Yes.
for this panel. How does the ECCB ensure the regulation of financial institutions and plans to handle financial loss due to institutions' poor management, if any? How does the ECCB ensure the regulation of financial institutions, and how do they handle a situation of financial loss due to an institution's poor management, if any?
This gives me opportunity to speak a little bit more to what we'll be doing on the Office of Financial Conduct. But what we already do on the microprudential side, we issue what we call guidelines to the banks to ensure that the banks act in particular manner with respect to different metrics, like I said, your capital, your liquidity, and so on. With respect to consumer protection, we will be issuing what we call codes of conduct. These have the force of law under the Banking Act. The Banking Act was amended in 2024, and it was passed in Antigua and Barbuda in 2025. So, under the Banking Act, these have the force of law. The first two we will be issuing when we launch are related to complaints handling and financial access and inclusion within the banking system. There are quite a few codes of conduct we will be issuing, such as treatment of suspected incidents of frauds and scams. So that is one. I suspect the consumer was alluding to that. So there will be guidelines as to how the banks treat those, and quite a few other codes of conduct. Initially, we planned to issue about 15 of those, but over time, we may issue more. With respect to when banks do not act according to the law, the Banking Act does provide for what we call administrative penalties. should banks not meet the conditions under the Banking Act. And so that will be assessed and evaluated by the central bank in the context of the examination and the analysis, and those penalties will be levied when and if necessary.
So I think the crux of the question is as well, if I am dissatisfied with the recourse I'm getting from my bank, do I call my lawyer or do I call the ECCB?
Okay, so I could get to that. So under the Office of Financial Conduct, there will be a complaints handling procedure. So if you have a complaint or a query, your first port of call is to your bank. It may be just a query. You may see something on your financial statement that may not make sense. You go to your bank and you ask a question, and if it turns into a complaint, your bank will provide you with the relevant forms so that you could fill in and submit that complaint. The bank will track that complaint, and they will evaluate and examine, do the investigation, and provide you with an answer, adjudicate. If you are not satisfied with your response from your bank, then you will be able to come to the ECCB. You will file a complaint with the ECCB. The ECCB will track it. We will have in place, by the time we launch the Office for Financial Conduct in September, a web portal where you could use to fill in your complaint, or an application on your phone, a mobile application. So you will use these two mechanisms to file your complaint. The ECCB will examine the complaint on its own merit, investigate, perhaps call you for further information, perhaps call the bank, ask them to provide supporting documentation, and the ECCB will adjudicate. If you are still not satisfied, you're not happy with that response, there is yet another level called the Financial Dispute Resolution Commission. This will be a 3-person commission, 1 person nominated by the ECCU Bankers Association, 1 person nominated by the ECCB, and a 3rd person jointly nominated by the Bankers Association and the ECCB. That 3rd person will be an attorney at law with more than 10 years of experience, and that 3rd person will be the chair of the commission, and they will investigate and adjudicate. If you are not happy with the outcome of the FDRC process, you have 28 days to file before the courts to seek further redress.
Well, that's a mouthful. What you didn't say is that it's the local courts, then the CCJ, then the Privy Council. Yeah. All right. A round of applause for this panel this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very informative. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
You didn't give us summary?
Oh.
15 seconds to summary. I need my 15 seconds.
I thought I had 20 days to file, 28 days to file. All right. So 15 seconds of a wrap from each of you, please. ASP, let's start with you.
I would like to encourage persons who might have been or potentially might be a victim of an online fraud to come forward and make that report. As someone alluded to earlier, pride and shame because we find ourselves in a certain position and we feel that we should not have been defrauded. Don't worry about that. We are all potential victims, and you should make the report because it's important for our record. And I'd also like to say that we are still working hard to bring those perpetrators to justice. We can tell you that we know who they are. Let me say for the camera, we know who you are, and we are going to come and get you. So just be patient with us. We're working, okay? Thank you.
And the media is here. I think that's a headline story for tomorrow. All right. Lieutenant Colonel Croft, let's hear from you.
Just to indicate that the ONDCP continues to target the perpetrators of these crimes and put recipients of stolen monies on notice. Receiving, transferring, withdrawing, possessing, or otherwise using stolen monies carries the same legal consequences as doing the financial fraud itself. This agency remains prepared to pursue enforcement and the prosecution accordingly. To all the criminals and their facilitators, we will find you, we will arrest you, and we will prosecute you.
To the fullest extent of the law. All right. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel. And Dr. Polios, you have 15 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to say that the ECCB will be launching the Office for Financial Conduct in September 2026, which is a financial consumer protection regulator. We are going to be working with the banks on what we call a Bank Smart campaign, which is to explain to customers about their rights under the law, but not only their rights, their responsibilities as financial consumers to ensure that we act as, responsible citizens and responsible financial citizens within our community, and so that we could work for ourselves and work for our families as well.
All right. Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists this evening. ASP Kelvin Thompson, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Croft, and Dr. Tracy Polios. Okay, we've got to be judicious with our time now. We've got one final panel left. It's on collaboration and the future outlook. So very quickly, what we can look forward to besides the arrest and prosecution of the criminals. All righty. All right, so you will see some faces that you saw previously and some new faces join our panel now. And now that I can apologize for incorrectly pronouncing her name earlier, let's invite Mrs. Levia Burton-Mack back to the podium, Deputy Director of Financial Services. We're inviting as well back to the podium Mrs. Gordina Hector-Morel, Director of Cybersecurity within the Ministry of ICT. We welcome Mr. Michael Spencer. He, of course, is the Director within the Antigua Barbuda Montserrat Banking Association. He's also the General Manager of the Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank, ECAB. A round of applause for our panelists. All right, Mrs. Burton-Mack, let's start with you here on this national conversation and why simply is it important that we don't end the conversation here, that we continue to talk about the risks that are involved and what we can continue to do, that is, to protect ourselves and our businesses.
Okay, good evening again. And I would like to start off by saying, and I think it's important to know that this is just the beginning. It's the start of an important discussion that we recognize needs to be done in collaboration. So I say to you this evening, why hello? You will be seeing much more of us. You'll be seeing much more of us as we push through with this agenda to not only raise awareness, but to ensure that people are protecting themselves. And the reason for this is that the criminals are adapting. The bad actors know. They adapt to whatever controls that you put in place, and no sooner that you have put a mechanism in place to address the situation, they come forth with another avenue to circumvent the controls that you have put in place. And as a result of that, there are a number of initiatives that are being put on board. One of that, you would have heard Lieutenant Colonel Croft speak to the national task force that is being established. We have also established a task force, a cyber-enabled task force amongst our licensed financial institutions and in collaboration with the Office of ONDCP. And so we are working very closely with them with a very comprehensive action list that we have put in place for ourselves. And one of this has been through the Office of the Antigua and Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, this conference here, which is the starting point of what we're going to do. And I think we need to take a moment and give a resounding applause to the country of Antigua and Barbuda for this proactive approach. So this is just one step that we're doing. As a central bank, there are some additional steps that we're taking, and Dr. Tracy Polios would have highlighted some. But amongst these is improving our digital literacy across our member countries. And so while customers are embarking on new journeys and we're going in, we're taking all the little selfies and we're posting about our child that was born at 3:58 p.m. on that exact date, giving the answers to those security questions online, This is the education that we want to raise amongst you. You need to be careful with the information that you are sharing out there because the perpetrators are watching. They are watching, they are taking that information, and that is what is being used against our customers. We are also taking steps in terms of our Bank Smart campaign that Chief Director would have spoken about, and so that will be launched through the Office of the Financial Conduct. But more so, it will be utilizing avenues to get to our audience. We have a very young audience in some cases, but we also have audience that are not so inclined to the TikTok, so they are not clocking it on TikTok. But there are other avenues we need to get to them and speak to them, and sometimes you simply have to pound the pavement as a financial institution to get to the audience that you want. And these are some initiatives. So the discussions we are just starting, I hope you are not tired of my voice. I hope there will be much more interface with our customers as we seek to address, raise awareness, and ask you to safeguard yourself. While we sit here and we say, yes, we are protecting the stability and integrity of our financial system, this cannot be done alone. And while we recognize cyber-enabled fraud is a difficult mechanism, and ASP Thompson would have highlighted that, he said cyber-enabled fraud, it's complex. But it's not a defense strategy that we seek to take on board. And so together, with our financial institutions, with all the stakeholders at the table, telecommunication providers, enough is enough. We are going to address the issue, and this is the beginning of the discussions.
All right, thank you very much. To Mrs. Hector Morel, let us ask this question because cyber-enabled fraud is constantly evolving, changing, and we're talking a lot about shared responsibility and collaboration and what individuals, what businesses, what governments are doing. What makes you so confident that we can stay ahead of the curve, so to speak, and stay ahead of the game?
Good evening again. So as advancement in technology continues, we have current and emerging technologies that require more and more activities are going to be taking place online. And as a result of that, risk is increasing. The cyber criminals are utilizing those emerging technologies. So for us, threat intelligence is important, it's critical. The sharing of information among relevant stakeholders is important. You see, the cyber criminals, they have something. They are organized. It's like a well-oiled machine. We have to work together. So collaboration, breaking down the silos, working together, and engaging with users, educating our public. We all need to work together. Now, this event is a proactive approach. It's a step in the right direction. And so that gives me hope that at least we are making a start. Today, or this evening, is not the last of it. We need to engage more, work together more. And that gives me hope that as we work together, we will be able to counter the cyber criminals.
All right, thank you very much. The Coordinator Hector Morel there, Director of Cybersecurity within the Ministry of ICTs. And Mr. Spencer, the final question is for you. What role the Antigua Barbuda Bankers Association has brought us here this evening? What role are you going to play to ensure that this conversation, as we've been talking about, continues at least on the national level?
Right. Good evening to all.
Good evening.
Firstly, I'd like to start by saying that as an association, we do understand the impact that these cyber-related events are having on certain sectors of our community, and we remain fully committed to continue to collaborate with all of our partners as we seek to address this issue and strengthen the resilience of the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. I think a central theme that we've all heard here this evening, and I think it's certainly evident, and I'd like us to leave with this, is to say that cyber fraud, cyber-enabled fraud, is no longer just a banking issue. It is a national issue. It affects individuals, businesses, governments, and ultimately, confidence in our economy. So from the perspective of the Bankers Association, if there's one message I'd like us to leave here with this evening, it is this. No single organization can win this fight alone. No single organization can win this fight alone. Cybercriminals collaborate across borders and industries, and our response must be equally coordinated. Today's forum marks the beginning of an ongoing national effort to combat cyber-enabled fraud. The Antigua and Barbuda Montreal Bankers Association remains fully committed to working alongside the government, regulators, and law enforcement, telecommunications providers, and other partners to educate the public, strengthen collaboration, and build trust in our digital system. We will continue to promote customer awareness. We will continue to encourage the timely reporting of suspected fraud, and we heard a lot about reporting earlier from other panelists. And we will ensure that every case presented to your financial institution is carefully assessed on its own merit with open and transparent dialogue throughout the process. We stress again that this is a shared responsibility, and we want to ensure that our customers, that their safety is paramount to us, and we certainly look forward to continue cooperating with all stakeholders and seeking to reduce the opportunity for fraud. Before closing, though, and I might be over the 2-minute mark, but if you just allow me.
Might.
Good. There are 4 areas where I believe we could make the greatest contribution. 1, information sharing. We'll continue to do that. As banks, we collaborate, we share information amongst each other to ensure early detection, and we understand what's happening to prevent it from happening. 2, public education. This event here this evening, the forum, and we intend to have ongoing collaboration going forward. This would help if we spread the message, we educate the public, and we seek to ensure that everyone is unaware of the various risk factors, such that we have a coordinated national risk assessment or awareness session across the country. 3rd, industry collaboration. We'll continue to collaborate with our industry partners across the industry. We work with regulators, as we heard, the law enforcement officials, where we share best practices to strengthen our cyber resilience. And finally, advocacy and partnership, where we can support stronger policies, encourage investment in cybersecurity capabilities, and deepen our collaboration with law enforcement. We heard about the national task force that's been established. We heard earlier from Ms. Morel about the National Incident Task Force. These are all entities and bodies that the Antigua and Barbuda Montreal Bankers Association will continue to support, and we will be actively engaged with these entities and bodies. The banking sector is committed to doing its part, but lasting success will certainly depend on all of us working together. The government, the private sector, law enforcement, educators, the media, and the public. If we collaborate together and we collaborate effectively, we share information openly, we continue to educate our citizens, we will significantly strengthen our country's resilience against cyber-enabled fraud. And I'm hopeful that as we leave here this evening with all of the information that's been shared, that we will truly realize this in the coming months and years ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spencer. I am happy Dr. Polis is not on this panel because I really cannot afford you 15 seconds for a wrap-up, ladies and gentlemen. So I really appreciate your being here. A round of applause for our panelists here this evening. We're almost at the end. I'm going to invite you, though, to ask your questions when we have the networking event afterwards, but we cannot leave without thanking a few people. So I'm going to invite for the vote of thanks, Mrs. Priscilla Leonce, Director of the Antigua Barbuda Bankers Association, to thank us all.
Good evening, everyone. As we come to the close of this timely and insightful National Cybersecurity and Fraud Prevention Protection Forum, it is my distinct pleasure to offer the vote of thanks on behalf of Antigua and Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association. First, I would like to extend sincere thanks to our moderator, Mr. Ursel Charles, for expertly guiding today's discussions and ensuring a dynamic and engaging forum. Our heartfelt appreciation goes to Mrs. Karen Richardson, President of Antigua and Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, for her warm welcome and for the association's leadership in organizing this important forum. We're deeply grateful to Honorable Minister Nelson Nicholas, he had to leave earlier, Minister responsible for ICT, and Lieutenant Colonel Edward Croft of the ONDCP for your opening remarks and for reaffirming your commitment to strengthening Antigua and Barbuda's cybersecurity landscape through collaboration and public education. To our distinguished panelists, all of you, thank you for sharing your expertise, experience, and practical insights. Your discussions on understanding cyber threats, consumer protection, regulation, and the future of digital safety have provided us with valuable knowledge that we can all take back to our organizations, our families, and our communities. To all of our partners, the Office of the National Drug and Money Laundering Control Policy, ONDCP, the Royal Police Force of Antigua and Barbuda, the telecom providers, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the Antigua and Barbuda Montserrat Bankers Association, thank you for demonstrating what can be achieved when public and private sector organizations work together towards a common goal. This forum is a shining example of collaboration in protecting the public through awareness, prevention, and digital safety. Special thanks to ECCB for hosting the event on their platform, the technical team, Casco Rhythm Master, and ACT for sponsoring the landing page for the forum, Marketing Machine for sponsoring photography, GP Productions for providing graphic design, and Johnny St. Louis Financial and Conference Center Administration for their hospitality. Finally, thank you to each participant for your presence, your engagement, and your thoughtful contributions. We hope you leave today better informed, more vigilant, and empowered to help create a safer digital environment for all. Have a safe journey home, and may you continue to stay safe, both online and offline. Thank you.
And thank you, Madam Leonce. Now, I just want for us to be assured before we leave here this evening, to be reminded of some of the thoughts that were left, that cyber-enabled fraud can happen to anyone. So do not be ashamed, do not be fearful, report those crimes should they happen to you, and just know that the banks, the government, the ECCB, the regulators, the law enforcement agencies are all working together to ensure that there is a recourse. As they've said to us, they know who they are. We just need to get as much information as we can to them so that they're able to build those cases. I just want to thank all of you for being here this evening. The national conversation will continue, no doubt, and we invite you to be a part of that should the next Cybersecurity and Fraud Prevention Forum take place. Thank you so much, and enjoy what's left of your evening.